Hey everybody, I want to look at some simple workflows for creating joinery details in your drawings. So the first one I'm going to look at are rabbets and dados. So I have two sides here of a cabinet. They're 3/4 of an inch wide by 24 inches tall. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a top. And I'll use the data display bar to set the thickness. And just use the smart points of the two sides for the width. What I'll do now is I want to have my top and bottom rabbited into my sides 3/8 of an inch on either side, and all of my shelves dadoed into the cabinet 3/8 of an inch. So I'll select the object, pin the middle point here, and then add 3/8 plus 3/8 to the width. So 3/8 for a rabbet on this side, 3/8 for a rabbet on that side, otherwise known as 3/4. And I've created my object. Now, just looking at this, this appears to be a rabbet. And for your drawing, that might be fine. You might not need to actually cut the rabbet into this piece. But what if you actually want to cut the rabbet into this piece? Here's what you do. You select the objects that you wish to be clipped and the clipping object, and stacking order is important. The object that's going to do the cutting has to be on top. If you have any doubt about whether it's on the top or in the middle or something, choose Modify, Send, Send to Front. That puts on the top of the stack. I can do one side at a time, or I can do them both together. I select them both, go up to Modify, and choose Clip Surface. Now, it doesn't look like anything's happened, but this one has deselected, this one's remained selected. I'm going to deselect them both and just move this out of the way. And notice I have cut my rabbet using the Clip Surfaces tool. Let me go back. If I were to select all objects here, and remember, this top one is the one that's on the front of the pile, or the top of the pile. If I go to Modify, Clip Surface, I can cut them at the same time. I'm now going to draw a few more shelves in the bottom. I'll use the Move by Points tool. I'll choose 3 duplicates. I'll retain the original. And I'll choose the second mode here, Move by Points, the Distribute mode. Click here and click here. Yep, I missed the bottom. Got to do that again. Click here and click there. And now I have distributed all of my objects. If you have any doubt, these are on the top, but if you have any doubt, select them all, choose Modify, Send to Front. Now when I select everything and use the Clip tool, because those are in the front, I can cut all of my rabbets and dados at one time. I think that's pretty slick. Alright, the next kind of joinery workflow I want to look at is drawing dovetails. So one way to draw dovetails is to draw your board and then draw another box, and I'm using some screen cues for the width. Pick up that smart point, and then I'll tab into the data display bar for my height, and I'll choose 1 inch. I'll then go up to Modify and choose from Drafting Aids, Even Divide. I'll choose 5 divisions in width, just 1 in height, click OK, and I get these divisions. I can then go back and delete what I don't want. So I have the basic layout now for my dovetails. I now need to cut the angle of the tail, and I'll use the chamfer tool for this. I really like this. I'll choose the second option here, first line and angle. My first line is 1 inch because that's the height of my tail. The angle is 14 degrees. This is arbitrary. It could be 11 degrees, it could be 8 degrees. It depends on how you want to cut your dovetails. And now I have to be careful that I choose the side first, and then the bottom, side, and the bottom. And I just need to go through and cut my tails. These are still separate objects. They're not part of my original board there. But before I add them, I want to have tails on the other end of the board. So rather than having to do the same layout on the other side, I'm just going to use the mirror tool and duplicate them on the end. And then the last step in my workflow here is to select them all, choose Modify, Add Surface, and there I have my board, my initial board. Let me draw another board. Here's another way. Let's go 8 inches, tab, 12 inches. Move this down out of the way. So another way of laying out your pins would be to just do another 1 by 1 height. You can cut your pin first. I'm still going to use the chamfer tool. You could use the polygon tool and constrain your angle. Oops. And draw your tail that way. You could also use the split tool. Make sure you go all the way through. If you just touch the line, oftentimes it won't cut all the way through. And then close the polygon and then come over here on this side and cut through and close it. And I could use snap to distance or some smart points or something to figure out how much to cut, but I find that sort of cumbersome. I really like using the chamfer tool. I find it's the fastest, and I can be the most precise using it. So I'll keep my same settings, first line and angle. And I'll cut my tail. Now in terms of positioning, what if I want to have my tail start 1.5 inches in? I can use snap to distance. I'll choose 1.5. And notice now when I move my cursor over an edge, when I'm in the selection tool, I get an arrow at 1.5 here and an arrow at 1.5 there. So I can grab the midpoint of the bottom there and snap it to that snap to distance point. I'm now going to use move by points. I'll choose 4 duplicates, click OK, and I'll move the center of my tail, and then I'll pick up the snap to distance point over here as my second point and let Vectorworks do the rest. The rest of the sequence is much like the one above. I select these, I choose the mirror tool, and duplicate them on the other end of the board. I select them all, modify, add surface, and I have my board with tails on both ends. Now to cut the pins. So the beauty of Vectorworks is I can now use my tails to cut my pins. But remember, stacking order is important. I have to make sure that my tails are on top. So I'm going to choose Modify, Send, Send to Front. I can select them both, choose Modify, Clip Surface, and I've cut my other part. In 2D, the parts don't look so different. In 3D, there'd be tails and pins.